Namaste and welcome to Live, Love, Engage. Today we are going to be talking about selling from the heart and why it's important. And we've got a wonderful guest with us today who is an expert in this area, and her name is Catherine Watkin. So first off, welcome to Live, Love, Engage, Catherine.
Oh, hello, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast.
Well, we are delighted to have you. And let me share with all of our listeners and viewers on YouTube why. She is the founder of Selling from the Heart, and she is a sales expert who works with heart-centered business owners who are gifted and passionate about what they do, but struggle in business because they feel awkward when it comes to selling their services. I've been there, done that. But she teaches them how to have effective sales conversations that feel authentic and comfortable, and more importantly, get great results. And she is also an authentic and inspiring speaker with an important message and a role model for how it is possible to create a successful business without resorting to those sleazy, manipulative sales and marketing tactics that so many of us don't like. So I love this subject because I recently changed my tagline to messages from the heart, because I do believe it is important for us to be authentic. So before we get into maybe specifics of how you can do that, tell me why, and tell our listeners actually really why you got interested in this subject yourself. Why do you have a passion for teaching people about how to sell from the heart?
Well, I'll try not to make it into too long a story, but it goes back a fair way because I actually, prior to setting up in business for myself, I had a career in sales. So I accidentally fell into sales when I was 23 years old, had no intention of being in sales at all. I don't think any salesperson ever does. And by the time I came to this business, I had about 20 years behind me working in sales. So, I'd been very successful. I'd worked in the travel industry for many years. Then I'd done quite a few years in the recruitment industry, which in particular was a very target-driven, competitive field to work in sales. And what I didn't realize at the time, because I didn't have the language for it then, is that even though I would get sent off on these sales training courses and I'd be taught the NLP techniques and the manipulative techniques and the closing techniques, I used to come back with a knot in my stomach at the idea of treating people in that way. And I just used to, when my manager wasn't listening, I would just think, you know what, I'm just going to sit here and do it my way. And as it happened, my way turned out to be really effective. And I worked for probably three big companies in total, one in the travel industry, two in the recruitment industry. And in all of them, I was in the top 2 or 3 salespeople in the company. Wow. So my way worked. I then eventually left that world. I was desperate to find work that felt meaningful for me. I was very unfulfilled by what I did. I loved working in sales. I always used to say that I was blessed to get paid to talk to people all day long. But there was a lot about it that didn't feel meaningful and didn't feel fulfilling. And I embarked on this 5-year journey to figure out what it was I was meant to do in the world, thinking that none of it would have anything to do with sales. And as part of that, I retrained in a number of different things, only to discover that none of them felt quite right. But they included training as a coach, as a hypnotherapist, as a yoga teacher, NLP practitioner, nutritional therapist, amongst other things. What I started to notice was that although my heart wasn't really in those things, when I started my businesses, I would get clients. And I very quickly got this reputation with people who I'd trained with for, hey, Catherine, we hear you have all these clients. How do you do it? And what I realized, it wasn't obvious to me at first, was because of my background in sales. Yes, I had everything to learn about marketing. I had everything to learn about pricing and how to structure my business. But I didn't have any hang-ups or what I call stuff around sales. And I saw that all of these heart-centered business owners, people who really cared deeply and wanted to make a difference to other people through their work, had so many hang-ups about sales and what that meant and how that somehow meant being a bad person, that they were not doing anything to try and reach out to clients. They were not doing anything to encourage clients to book in for conversations. And so that's where it was born. I started running a 1-day workshop for coaches initially. And that was such a success. I then expanded, and that was about 10 years ago that I've been doing this. And before that, I didn't find anything I really enjoyed ever. And I found something that I've done without faltering for 10 years. So it's been an amazing journey.
Well, I love how you had to experiment and try all these different things, I think, in order to be able to figure it out. And your background is what helped you to be successful in this. And I think one of the things I've learned in my life too is we really have to. I think the universe helps us along and kind of giving us some ideas of what to do, and helps to lay the foundation. Sometimes we don't realize it at the time until later, and then we're like, oh yeah, so that makes perfect sense now why I went through that, because now I can do this. So I think that's great that you've been able to do that. So tell me, what is well, what have you found actually? Because I kind of had an idea, but why do in your experience in working with clients, why do so many people, I think, have like this misconception about sales, and it is why they resist and they don't make follow-up calls and things like that? What have you found to be maybe some of the common denominators in that?
I think the two common reasons are, first of all, we have all experienced sales that just does not feel good to us.
Right.
We have been backed into corners. We've been felt that we haven't been listened to. We felt that the salesperson is just out for their own agenda, irrespective of what's best for us. Some of us, certainly in my own experience, I've had more than one occasion where I would actually say that I was bullied and shamed when I decided not to go ahead with somebody, and left me feeling upset for quite a few days. Now, I'm particularly sensitive, but it left me feeling quite upset and quite shaken, because I'd shared a lot of personal information with these people in good faith. And what happens for heart-centered business owners who really care and want to make a difference is that's been their experience of sales. And then they come to believe, well, if I want my business to be successful, I need to learn how to sell. And selling means doing all of that stuff that felt so awful when I was at the receiving end. I really don't want to do this to other people. And so therefore, I'm not going to do anything. Yeah. And then connected to that is what I call traditional sales. So I have titled what I do heart-centered sales, and then I make a distinction between that and traditional sales. So they may even have gone off and done some traditional sales training, like I was sent on it when I worked back in the corporate world. And it doesn't mean that that sales training doesn't work. Traditional sales is extremely effective. That's why it's been taught for all of these decades or however long it is. Right. But it's not for everybody. And I think that for heart-centered business owners who are in business to make a difference, first of all, if they just have that knot in their stomach that says, I just don't want to do this stuff. But also, if when you sell, you're entering into an ongoing, quite deep relationship with your client, which many of us do if we're coaches or healers, for example, that style of traditional sales based around closing techniques and manipulation doesn't set you up for a strong commitment and a strong base of trust for the process that's about to follow. So I always like to say, closing the sale, it just doesn't work for a heart-centered business. We have to find another way.
So can you share, because obviously, I'm not going to have you share your whole process here, because I'm sure people need to go through a course or coaching lesson with you, but
I can share a process. I do have it available for people to sign up for and get for free. So yeah, and I'm very happy to talk through my process.
Okay. Well, sure, I would love to hear it. if you're game for it, yes.
Yeah. So yes, I'll go. What I'll do is I'll go quite high level, because it's all available in a 35-minute video series for people to go and get hold of for themselves. So if I keep it quite high level, then I won't take up too much time on the podcast. But I teach a 7-step process for authentic sales conversations, and it's designed to help somebody who's not very confident about sales make sure that they're asking all the right questions in the right order in order to guide a client, to help the client make their own decision. I'm very big on this. It has to be the client's decision. There is nothing I can teach you, and there's nothing anybody can teach to help you make a client say yes if they're not emotionally invested or committed. Right. So I'm aiming to get to something called the internal yes. And the internal yes is when the client has the feeling bubbling up from within them, oh my gosh, yes, I think I want to do this. Everything she says sounds like just what I need. And there might be some nervousness, there might be concerns, but the internal yes is bubbling up in them. They may not have said anything yet, but if the internal yes is there, yes, there may be a conversation to be had, but you don't need closing techniques or objection handling techniques or to become like a through and through salesperson in order to enroll clients. So the process goes to go through the 7 steps. Step 1 is setting up the agenda, literally letting the potential client know what's about to happen, and also setting up at this point that you may be making them an offer or an invitation later on in the conversation, which helps reduce some of the feelings of salesiness if they don't know it's coming.
Right.
Step 2 is open up. This is literally about making sure the rapport is in place and that the client feels open and ready for the conversation to come. So very safe, non-invasive, gentle questions like, so tell me what prompted you to book in to talk to me today? Or if you're a parenting coach, tell me how old your kids are, tell me a little bit more about them. Very safe.
Right.
There'll come a point where you feel, and it won't take very long if you're a good fit for each other, where you just feel that there's like an opening up. The client has relaxed into the conversation. They trust you. They've put down some of their resistance to the fact that you might be wanting to sell to them. And then you can move into step 3, which is explore problem. And this is just where you go a bit deeper into what's brought them there today. So this is where you might say, you mentioned this thing earlier. Please tell me more about that. I'd love to hear more. You might ask more questions about how is this impacting you in other areas of your life? How does it make you feel? What will this mean to you if this stays the same and doesn't change in the next 12 to 18 months? So you're what you're not doing here. This is selling with integrity. You are not creating problems that do not exist, and you are not putting fear in the heart of your clients. A lot of sales teachers to do that. I don't teach that. You're literally asking the client to give voice to the things that are already troubling them when they lay their heads on the pillow at night, or the first thing they think of. I never have trouble laying my head on the pillow, but I have my fears come up when I wake up in the first thing in the next morning. That's where mine come out. Then once you've done that and they feel heard, they feel listened to, they feel cared for, you then want to do step 4, which is test commitment. Very quickly, just one question to check in and see how serious they are about actually doing something about this. Because some people are committed to resolving an issue. Other people are not. They're just happy to have the place to talk about it. And some people are like most of us. There might be lots of different things going on in their lives that are not quite going smoothly, and they can't be working on all of them all of the time. So how serious are they about doing something about it? Then you move on to step number 5, which is compelling future. And this is where you ask questions to get the client to be able to really visualize and imagine a future where things are different. Because one of the biggest reasons why your client won't say yes to working with you is if they don't really believe it's possible for them. And if your client has got to the point where they're talking to you, for most of us, it's quite likely that you're not the first person that they've gone to for help. So if the problem's been going on for a long time, they can start to fall into this belief that, oh, this won't ever change for me. Right. So connecting them to that compelling future. Then you go into step 6, and this is where you present your solution. And by solution, I mean this is your service, your program, your offer, whatever it is that is your answer to whatever's going on for them. And I've talked about problems. It can be aspirations. People more often invest in solving problems, but people do also invest in aspiration too. So it could be one or the other. And in step 6, the first thing you do before you go into that is you check in with yourself. And again, this is the sales with integrity. Do I believe that what I'm offering is the right thing for this person? Do I believe this is the right time? Am I going to be doing them a service by encouraging them to go ahead with this? Or is there somebody else out there that could be better placed to help them? Or are they not ready for it? And only if you believe that you are the right person do you go into step 6. Step 6 is a little technical, so I can't teach that fully. I can't teach any of the steps fully, but this is one that you really need to do my training in order to get in detail. But this is where you present the way that you can help the client in such a way that when they hear you explain it, they absolutely understand why it would benefit them to do it and the value to them. And this is the area where most small business owners fall down. They've never learned how to do this properly.
Right.
They often say things like, oh, I know that I can do magic for people, but when I'm in front of a client, I can't find the words to explain it. And that's why the client goes away and says, I need to think about it. This is also where you tell them how much it's going to cost. Sorry, I missed a bit there. So once you've presented how you help, you let them know what the investment is going to be. And then step 7 is absolutely totally simple. And it's just one question, and it is ask for a decision. And it could be as simple as, so what do you think? Would you like to go ahead? There's lots of different ways of asking that question, but that is the 7 steps process. And at the end of that, you will hear, in theory, a yes, a no, or I need to think about it, or I can't afford it, or some variation on that. You may not hear a no. Certainly here in the UK, we don't hear no very often. People are far too polite to say no to you, especially if you've just spent the best part of an hour talking to them. So a no doesn't normally sound like a no. There's something called a polite no, which is a no that sounds like a maybe or a yes. And so there may be another conversation to sort of dig out where they're really at and maybe help address any concerns they've got. So the 7-step process is not the absolute end of the conversation. It is if they say yes, because then you just go into wrapping up the details and signing them up. But it can mean that there's another 10 to 15 minutes to go in your conversation of just helping them explore what might, because if they've had the feeling of the internal yes, but then they say, oh, I don't know, I feel like I need to think about it, it's quite probable that you will help them to get to that decision in the conversation. They just need a little more reassurance or a few concerns addressing that haven't been addressed.
Yeah, I love that. That's I know I've experienced those types of conversations with people who do know how to do that, and it is really nice, because then they do help you to they do establish trust with you, and you can feel safe to be able to say, either yes or no. And it's like, I really can't afford it right now, but maybe in 6 months. So but call me later, or, call me then, or I'll follow up with you then. But versus, where it is much more, I've also been on the other end of it too, where people are like, well, I mean, I had enrolled in a program, and then I realized afterwards, it was like my sister had just passed, and I'm like, I was in the throes of grief, and I realized I wasn't going to be able to give it all. And they really tried to keep me in the program. I mean, it was like, well, don't you think your sister would want you to do this? I'm like, I don't know. No, I think my sister would also want me to do what's best for me. And if I'm telling you that this is not the right thing for me right now, it's not the right thing for me right now. So
Yeah.
that type.
Yeah, and it's about respecting people, isn't it? That for me, I'm such a big believer in respecting the rights of other human beings to make their own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And that even if you disagree with the decision that person might make, because it's crystal clear to you that they should be doing this thing,
right,
still ultimately respecting their right to make their own choices. And and in an example like that, I think that people do business in different ways. I run what I call a heart-centered business. In that sort of situation, I wouldn't be forcing somebody to do something, because actually it doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve anybody to have somebody do a program when it's actually not the right time. And there have been times where I once had a lady whose sister was very unwell and she did in fact pass away eventually, and they knew that was on the cards.
Yeah.
And I was very concerned about taking on the client.
Yeah.
But yet the client convinced me that she wanted to, and actually it didn't work out that way. She was so preoccupied with what was going on with her sister that I put the program on hold and let her come back when she was ready. So yeah. And that 7-step process I've just shared, actually, can I let your listeners know where they can go to?
Oh, please do. Yes, absolutely.
Because there's a 35-minute version of that goes into a bit more detail, and it's at katherinewatkin.com/7 steps. So katherinewatkin.com/7 steps.
Okay.
And I'm sure you'll share the link with them.
I will
anyway.
definitely, yes, I'll definitely have that in the show notes for sure.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I'm glad you clarified the number 7, because I was going to ask you, is that spelled out, or is it?
I really should. I always think when I say it, I really should sort it out so that I have both versions pointing
That's true.
to it.
You could do
I don't know
that.
why
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet.
You'll get to it. You'll get to it.
Mm.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about is, well, actually two things, but number one, I know you mentioned, in doing some research, that one of the things that I think people get caught in doing are having like friendly chats that don't lead anywhere. Can you
Yeah.
tell us, like, yeah, what's like the pitfall about that and maybe how to avoid that?
Yeah, so I see that this a lot. I've also got a quiz. It's called the Authentic Sales Styles Quiz, and one of the profiles is a connector. But you don't have to be a connector to connectors are particularly fall into this, but you don't have to be a connector to recognize it's you. And it's something that I see a lot, particularly people in the early stages of business. They will go off and they will do what it takes to network. They might network online, they might network online, or offline or online. They'll invite people to conversations. It's not clear what the agenda is. And there's almost like so much, because there is this saying in sales, people buy people. And I think that people often like almost take that too much to heart and think, oh, as long as people like me, I'll end up getting clients. And what happens is that they end up booking conversations with no clear agenda. There's no clear focus. So it's a lovely, friendly chit chat. And the next thing you know, they've got a brand new friend. And people find that they're running around trying to get clients, but just building up a whole bank of new friends and still not a client in sight. And it's really because there's no focus to the conversation. So there is a place sometimes for meetings that have no clear agenda. If you feel that there's going to be some synergy, because sometimes if you just say, hey, I think we've got some synergy, let's hop on a call, magic can come out of it. Collaborations, referrals, ambassadors, all sorts of things.
Right.
But very often, new business owners are just booking everybody in for coffee with no real agenda or no real focus on why they're there. And, ultimately, if you can go, I would say to anybody to always go into a conversation with a clear focus in mind. You're in business, you haven't got time for all this chit chat. And then the tragedy of it is that these people end up buying from somebody, they buy from somebody else, but they buy the same thing that they offer. And so having a clear focus to the conversation, I think, is really important. Being clear what it is you want to talk about, being clear that you're offering to explore whether or not you could help them. Actually, in that conversation, having a focus, and this is where that 7 steps conversation really comes in, because you always know what the focus is. And even if you end up going off on a little bit of a tangent and you find that you're talking about something unrelated, you can remind yourself, oh, we're here for a sales conversation. Let me just pull it back on track, so that you've got a focus that by the end of that call, you're either inviting them to go ahead and work with you, or that might not be appropriate at that point. You might be inviting them to take a next step or sign up for something you have available for free, or to book another meeting. But always that focus on what's that next step for this person to take on that customer journey towards working with me. And you can totally make friends with your clients. Most of my friends are my ex-partner used to think I was hilarious, because every time I went out socially, he was always curious, and he'd say, oh, those 3 ladies you're going to meet tonight, how do you know them? And I'd think back a few years and I'd say, oh, they were my clients. So most of my friends actually were originally clients, but make no mistake, every single one of them was a client first and a friend later.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and that happened to me, because I've had, I had like a really good client, and then like a couple years later, we went out for my birthday, and I loved her so much. She was just, a lovely lady, and I like called her and invited her out, and and so she was with a group of my friends because she was a wonderful, lovely lady. And it is great, I think, when you can make friends maybe after, not necessarily right at the beginning, but I think as your relationship develops, it certainly
Yeah,
is a
we
good
have
thing
a
to have.
strange thing we all do with our friends, even very new friends, that we tend to not perceive our friends as the answer to our problem, because they're friends and they've opened up to us about a lot of stuff. And we often there's a little bit more of almost a mystery, or something a little less accessible about somebody that we don't know so well. So we're far more likely to sign up to work with somebody that we don't know quite as well. and then the friendship can develop from there. And yes, I mean, I agree with you. I work with heart-centered business owners. This is my niche, my specialism. I have an entire community of, so within my paid membership, I've got about 440 heart-centered people, beautiful souls. I don't necessarily meet these types of people if I just go out and about in my local area. The best people come to me through my marketing, actually. So my marketing finds me my best friends. I'd never seen it that way before.
Well, that's a good thing, isn't it? I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. And it's a good benefit of it. So that it's not even just business related, but that it can be more personal as well. One last thing I wanted to ask you is, how can someone who's trying to do this, say they go to your website and they watch the 35 minutes, how can they maybe still get it wrong? Have you ever seen that happen where, maybe still something doesn't quite gel, and I don't know if it's because they need to maybe do some more inner work, or what would you think?
Sometimes the issue is the mindset. And when I teach my course, which I run every autumn, every fall, the first module is all about the mindset. It's called Sales is Not a Dirty Word, because I always say it doesn't matter how effective that structure is. If you still deep down inherently believe that the very act of selling is somehow bad or wrong or disingenuous, doesn't matter what I teach you, you are not going to want to do it. And so it really starts with the mindset. And I know that I was so lucky with my business. My business was very successful very quickly. And I know that the really large part of that was because I came without all these negative beliefs and baggage around what sales is. And so there's quite a lot of different things that I teach. And I run a free challenge called Fall in Love with Sales every September. And it's a free 5-day challenge. And it is absolutely designed. All I do in that challenge is what I'm going to talk about here, which is how you give people that mindset shift from dreading sales and thinking that there's something actually wrong with it, to feeling fully in alignment with it, looking forward to it, actually realizing that you could fall in love with it. And I'll just try and pull out a couple of pieces. So one of the things is coming to see sales as part of your service. So not thinking like, oh, I'm a transformational coach or healer or transformational worker, and I'm going to do this beautiful work with somebody, but there's this really icky, ugly piece called sales that I somehow have to get out of the way first. Actually, we serve our clients at the very highest level possible when we are willing to take them through a guided conversation, ask the right questions, some of which take a bit of courage on our part as the business owner, be willing to take a stand for the client and have a difficult conversation if there's a difficult conversation to be had. And if you really, truly, deep in your heart, believe that you can help, making that invitation and making it with conviction. And, I think so many people just don't see sales in that way. If you understand that when you sell, that's really when you're helping. That's almost right. More than the work, because they don't get to experience the work if you don't sell to them. And another piece there is about how you sort of almost take yourself out of the equation. So another block that people have is this real consciousness on, I've got to sell myself. I'm trying to sell myself. And when I sell, it inevitably looks self-serving, because of course I'm going to profit from it. So no matter how well-meaning I am, ultimately I look like it's all about me because I'm going to profit from it. So I have a process that I take people through of removing themselves from that equation by imagining that it wasn't them that the person was buying from, imagining that it was their best friend who had the problem, and the best friend had been recommended to somebody who was really capable and competent and came highly recommended, and their best friend had come to them to ask their advice. What would they then be saying? They may well be wholeheartedly encouraging their friend to go ahead. So if they can somehow, during this, now we can't unlink ourselves and our businesses from the financial reward, because we need financial gain or we wouldn't be in business and we couldn't help anybody. Exactly. But in the moment of the sales conversation, whether I'm in a one-to-one conversation or I'm selling on a live webinar, I like to completely unhook my mind from any gain that there might be for me financially, and just go fully into service and what is best for these people in front of me right now. And if you can do that, then that energy, that negative energy of, oh gosh, they think I'm just after their money, that can be like unhooked. And that's a process that I take people through. It's probably more effective when it's done than when it's described. But
Yeah.
these things shift, these negative feelings about sales, which mean that people are then available to implement what I teach
Yeah.
because they feel very congruent and it feels very in alignment for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I actually did a presentation recently about just even speaking from the heart. And that was one of the tenets was to let go of the expectations, let go of of what you expect the outcome to be. Because I know in the past when I've been like, oh, I really want to be able to get like, 5 people signed up for this thing, and I'm focused on that wanting, then it doesn't work, because it actually winds up repelling people. So if you can, as you say, come to it more from a place of service, that you're wanting to help people, and it will be a lot more successful.
Yeah, it's more successful because your client picks up on the energy.
Yeah.
And I sometimes say that you could use the exact same words. You could say the exact sentence or ask the exact question word for word. But if you're coming from a place of lack, fear, grasping, needing, desperation,
Yeah.
that can come across as self-serving and salesy.
Hmm.
Exact same question, exact same words in the exact same order, that comes from a place of love, service, care, what's best for that person right now. They feel the difference, and the difference is there in your tone of voice, and
Yeah.
and people respond.
Absolutely. Oh, this has been awesome. And I know I'm going to want to check this out too, because I still from time to time still get, it's like, I know what you said today. In fact, I've even trained with other people who've recommended the same type of things, but sometimes I still find myself getting a little, tripped up. So I think it's a good practice. And actually, now that I think about it, I think it probably is a good practice for everyone who is a business owner to do that, take a refresher course, to do this every once in a while, just
Yeah. Do
to
you know,
help.
I've run my course now for about 9 years.
Mm.
And every year, now I may change this at some point, but at this point that we're speaking today, I haven't. Every single year, I invite every past alumni to retake it as a refresher and attend the live calls. And the reason I do that is for that reason, is that sales is such a critical part of our business. Yet most people are neglecting it in favor of their marketing. So people
Mhm.
will spend all the day long on social media, or they'll give their podcast interviews and they'll do their speaking,
Yeah.
but they don't pay a lot of attention to the sales piece, which is sort of 50% of the equation. Because if you can't encourage people to buy from you, all of the other work is wasted. And
Yeah.
it is easy to slip. We all do. Even, I slip as well. If I'm not really conscious and focused, I make mistakes or forget something or get it wrong. And sometimes there are people who've worked with me for a really long time. Like people may have been in programs with me for years, and then they'll come and report in that their sales aren't going so well. Maybe they've just had a run of calls where people haven't bought. And I always send them back into the course. I say, go back into the course. I specify which modules, because they don't need all the modules if they're more
Right.
experienced at it. Back
Yeah.
into the course. These are the modules. Go and follow that. Go and find a buddy, practice, because it's mastery. And we need to keep, the beautiful thing about sales is it's not like social media. The algorithm doesn't change all the time. Once you've learned it, you've got it for life.
That's
But we
true.
slip into bad habits again, and we need to
Yeah.
revisit and pick them back up again.
Absolutely. Well, I can tell just from having this conversation with you today that you do practice what you preach, and that you are, definitely a heart-centered business owner, because that is the vibe that you uh, portray or give off, I guess is the word.
Mhm.
So I thank you so much for being here today. And again, just remind our listeners how they can, get in touch with you, take your courses. Again, what's the best way?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for having me, and for just holding such a beautiful space for the conversation. And in terms of finding me, so my main online home is at sellingfromtheheart.com. I say that because it's easier than figuring out the spelling of my name. So sellingfromtheheart.com. And if people go there, they'll find there on the homepage a link to sign up for the 7 Steps to Yes free video series, and also the Authentic Sales Styles quiz. But there are also a couple of links that I think that I could give you to add to the show notes. If people want to go directly to the 7 Steps to Yes
Okay.
It's at katherinewatkin.com/7 steps. Yes, I already gave you that. And I can give you a link to the quiz as well, so people can go straight there. And that's the best place to start. And then in September every year, I run, I only do it once a year, but I run a challenge called Fall in Love with Sales. And it's a 5-day journey from believing you could never, ever, ever get comfortable with selling to actually starting to fall in love with it. So if people sign up, they'll be in the loop to take part in that in September as well.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you again so much for being here. And I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak with us. And I encourage all the listeners out there, if you are in business, to go to her website, go check it out. It will be in the show notes in case you didn't get a chance to write it down, and take advantage of that offer, because I know I'm going to be looking at it too. And as always, again, thank you for listening, for watching. Hopefully you are subscribed on your podcast platform of choice, or on YouTube, our YouTube channel as well. I thank you for that. And until next time, I am Gloria Grace Rand, wishing you all the ability to go out and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.